and I would like more to put pressure on Russia with the oil cap, with not exporting to them, and we have to do more on the shadow fleet, as Valdis says. So much has to be done, and if we think a bit in the long run, the day will come when the war is over. We don't know when. But then all investments that have taken place in Russia right now almost is in the war.
Correct.
So, I mean, the ruble is very weak, the investments, the economy is weak, capital fly. So it will be some tough years after the war too, of course. Let's continue to pressure, and we do that as a country, and we have to do that as companies too.
So I would be crazy to not bring up the elephant in the room today and this entire week, and that is U.S. President Donald Trump. We're here to talk about Russia, so I'll use that framework to think about Trump's influence. But, you know, he has in the past said he could resolve the war in one day. He has in the past, and more recently as well, said that NATO needs to up its defense spending to even 5%, which would cause all the same problems that you're describing in Russia in Europe. How do you respond to that?
First of all, I mean, I wasn't so surprised of anything in the speech, but I was a bit sad that Ukraine, he didn't mention Ukraine, and that is troubling, I think, of course. We'll see what happens, because yesterday, me and Valdis was at the same meeting as a good friend of mine, Sergei Marchenko, who is Minister of Finance in Ukraine. He came to ECOFIN, and I visit him. When I see his work, when I see all the soldiers, I mean, they are doing so much to not only to see that Ukraine will be free, but that Europe will be free. It's so much more to do, and I hope that the new administration also wants that. But if it's so that they won't do as much as we hope, we have to do more. Now, when it comes to defense spending, on one hand, it's reasonable that Europe do more, because US has done very much, so that's reasonable. So I think we have to do more, but I don't think maybe even Trump wants 5% from them, because I mean, US
That's what he said.
Yeah, but
I mean,
US is also
it was hard enough for NATO countries to up to 2%, so 5% is a huge jump.
Yeah, definitely. So it won't be 5%, but because I don't think Trump wants for the US economy have 5%, because they have quite a large debt.
Yeah, that's true. That's very well put. Commissioner, similarly, you know, I know you work closely with your American counterparts on sanctions. What is your sense of how a change in administration in the United States will change overall strategy towards Russia?
First of all, we must understand that this is a war which is taking place in European continent. So, as European Union, we cannot shy away from this. So, it's clear that it's first and foremost for Europe to react. And given the fact that Russia is openly talking about invading other countries if they are successful in Ukraine, it's on one hand important to provide all the necessary support for Ukraine, that they can defend themselves, because they are also actually defending us, but also to ramp up our own defense capacities and defense industry. And talking about defense spending, you mentioned those 5%. So for countries which are bordering Russia or Ukraine, like Baltic states, like Poland, they are already raising defense spending to about 3% of GDP and aiming for 4%. So it just has become a necessity. So we were reaping this peace benefit maybe since the end of the Cold War, when the world could afford spend less on defense and spend more on something else. But now with Russia behaving like an aggressor, that has changed, and so we have to change as well.
I have to point out America may also behave like an aggressor with Denmark. It's a possibility you have to keep in mind.
Just maybe to finish on this cooperation on US. So our approach on cooperation with US is that EU and US are strategic allies. We are like-minded partners, and especially in situation where autocracies are challenging the current rules-based international world order. It's important that democracies are working together, and it is with this spirit of cooperation that we are approaching also the new Trump administration.
But with there is a very clear change in outlook between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. I understand you're being very diplomatic, sir, which you must do. But there could be similar changes in Europe as well, with elections in Germany and France coming up. There is a rightward shift globally. How does that impact, and especially with your job of being trade commissioner? We're in a world now where countries are turning inward. They're more protectionist. They focus more on their own domestic industrial policy. They want less globalization. And all of this, to bring it back to Russia, helps Russia, because in a world in which Russia is forming its own blocs, we haven't talked yet about its burgeoning alliance with North Korea, China, and Iran. How is Europe thinking about that?
That's exactly what I was mentioning, that it's not Russia alone. Indeed, it's finding allies, including North Korea, and it's worth noting that there are North Korean troops, significant numbers of them already engaged in this war against Ukraine. It's already happening. It's forging closer ties with Iran, which is supplying with different weapon systems, including Shahed drones. So it's clear that we must look also beyond Russia in this response, and if there is some kind of axis of autocracies forming, it's important that we are also having our alliance of democracies to counter that. And there is cooperation with US, but also with other like-minded partners in G7 and beyond the G7 is going to be very critical, and that's how EU is going to approach it.
Just give me a yes or no answer, but you still see the United States as like-minded, given that President Trump denied that he lost the last election, given that he just pardoned all of the people who were involved in the January 6th insurrection. You still see the United States as like-minded?
We have United States as a strategic partner and ally for many decades, and we see United States as indeed like-minded. Of course, we see that we are going to have challenges with Trump administration, what is now being talked about tariffs. There are other areas where it's going to be difficult, but we are ready to engage very closely with the new administration. Also, there is uncertainty surrounding what exactly stance and Trump administration will take vis-à-vis Russia and in terms of supporting Ukraine. But we are ready to engage in those discussions and find, to the extent possible, common solutions.
Minister, you mentioned that there could be a settlement one day, and we have to think about that day and the day after. What is your sense of, if there is some sort of a settlement, what kind of relations are you going to have with Russia after that?
I guess it's a bit too early to say, but we will definitely have a strong relation with Ukraine, stronger than before, and help them rebuild the country, using the frozen assets and more than we have done probably, and help them. But Russia has chosen its way. We have seen this coming, not exactly this war coming, but the path that Putin and the Russians have pointed out. And I guess we were probably naive 10, 15 years ago, and we shouldn't be naive in the future. It can take long before we have good relations with Russia. And it's not in our hands. It's really in Putin's and the coming government's hands. So I think we're problematic, and it's sad because we want things to be better, not worse. And right now it's a bit hopeless in some areas and hopeful in others, because when we in EU, we have 27 countries, when we talk now about Trump and tariffs, or we talk about the war, in Russia's war in Ukraine, I mean, tariffs is no problem at all compared to that we have war in Europe. And also, tariffs and US policy is, let me say this, we have our own destiny in our own hands in Europe. So we have to do more, both with economic growth and cooperation, and show that it's good. A market-based economy is good. And we'll continue to help Ukraine to make them stronger. And we'll see how the relation with Russia will be. But I think it will take a long time before we have good relations.
We're almost out of time. I just want to check if there are any questions in the room. Okay, in which case I'm going to ask one last question to you, Commissioner. President Zelensky of Ukraine has been here this week, and first in his speech, it struck me that he was talking a lot more about Europe than he has in the past, and separately when he was speaking with a few of us reporters on the sidelines on the record, it seemed to me that he was quite upset with Europe, A, because a lot of promises have been made about joining NATO, still hasn't happened, B, the security guarantees that they need for the future seem so much up in the air and so dependent on the United States. So there's a little bit of anger at Europe that I'm detecting. And to bring this all back to Russia, the reason why this matters is the longer this war goes on, the more of a problem it is for Europe and for Ukraine, of course. And the question I think Ukraine keeps asking is, why do you always give us enough to survive but not enough to win? What is Europe's answer?
That's a very valid question, and if we talk specifically on weapons delivery, we certainly should be giving more to Ukraine. We have now enough to cover Ukraine's financing need for this year, thanks to our Ukraine facility, thanks to the G7 extraordinary revenue acceleration loans. But we need to do more in terms of military supplies. That's critical right now, and we need indeed to work towards a peace solution which is just and lasting, which does not encourage Russia to continue its aggressive wars, because that's what Russia is clearly talking about. And yes, we need a very clear security guarantees for Ukraine, and the best security guarantee in this case is a NATO membership. Okay, that's not European Commission's business, obviously, but personally, that's what I would support, because we know Ukraine has security guarantees. When it gave up its nuclear weapons in the early 90s, there were Budapest Memorandum and security guarantees, including from the United States, from Russia itself, or many countries. But we see that these kind of security guarantees, they have not really amounted to as much as they should have been. We are still discussing that there are not sufficient support for Ukraine to fight against Russian aggression. So therefore, the question is what other type of security guarantees we can have, and it was a mistake back in 2008 that Ukraine was not admitted to NATO, because Russia as aggressor is not provoked by strengths. It actually is the only thing it understands its strengths. Russia as aggressor is provoked by weakness. So, and that was what provoked at Russia. So Putin saw Ukraine as a weak target. And okay, it's a 3-day war. It's lasting already almost 3 years, and this target has not turned out to be so weak after all. And we have provided lots of support, but that's the only language which Russia understands. So we need to demonstrate strengths, and we need to integrate Ukraine in Western structures. We have already started accession negotiations for the European Union with Ukraine, but in terms of security, of course, NATO is key.
I mean, of course, Zelensky is stressed, and he can be angry on us. I mean, it's a war. Let me just remind you, Europe, EU is not the Commission, but they have good commissioners. We are 27 countries, members, and we do a lot bilaterally. Also, many of us. So we do things together, and I'm very happy for that. But we also do things bilaterally, and we will continue to support. Sweden will do. We have a set of 25 billion Swedish crowns every year now just for support, and then EU has to do more, and we have to do more sanctions. So I don't think Zelensky should be grateful. I mean, that they are fighting a war for us.
Correct.
So we have to do more. So it's not so strange if it does. And we will do more, and both Valdis and I, living where we live also, I mean, Sweden and around all, I mean, you are even closer.
Yes,
border.
Indeed. Yes.
We are doing a lot, and we will do more.
Well, this is a question we'll have to re-engage with all year and beyond. Minister Svantesson, Commissioner Dombrovskis, thank you so much for your time. Round of applause, please.
Thank you.
We wanted to do a documentary about these strong women that I helped, but no network wanted to do it. Anyway, and so I trusted her completely. I had absolutely zero editing anything to do with the editing, and it's nothing at all. And watching the movie, and basically I didn't even want to watch it until opening night because I wanted to tell people, no, I haven't seen it. But she insisted that I watched it 1 or 2 months before. I did. But then when I was in the audience on opening night, we opened the Tribeca Festival. My husband was there, my son was there, my son cried the entire time. And it was very interesting because I was watching it completely detached and completely as a spectator. And what I wanted to tell you in front of everybody is that to be able to have the opportunity to detach yourself and to watch it, not, you know, I've written many books, but I write it. I've done a lot of things, but it's always me, my voice. And in this case, it was you. And actually, it has been very helpful for my growth. Even though I'm an old woman, I keep on growing. And so I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Diane's words always inspire me, so I definitely want you to share.
3 words. Okay, because I'm born on New Year's Eve. So I'm born on December 31st, and I always write my diary. So my new diary on January 1st is very important. It's a new diary, white page and everything. And I try to find, I always find words for the year. 2 years ago it was gratitude and gratitude and clarity. And last year was intention and manifestation. And this year it is strength, kindness, and the most important may be agility. I think it's a word that I actually never used before, but I think that in this crazy world where we all are, where we can absolutely not predict what is going on, I think more than ever it's important, first of all, that we are tight with ourselves, that we really have a really strong relationship, a practice about talking to ourselves every day, and be true to ourselves, and when we're feeling high, be low. When we're feeling low, it's okay, it's another door will open. I think the more important than ever is to be close to ourselves, and then to have agility and to be ready for anything. Because we as individuals have a lot of power, and we underestimate that power, and we have to use that power, and we shouldn't worry about really what other people think. If you're really truly honest with yourself, that means you're strict with yourself, so you should really do what you think is right.
Diane, your life has been like an anthem of freedom, where you've always forged your own path. And since the film has come out, I have watched as women who have watched the film, and even men, have approached you.
Men love it.
Yeah, and I want to know, what is the most surprising thing that you feel that once the film has come out into the world, that you've experienced by sharing your story?
I've only seen it 3 times, by the way. What surprised me the most is really men have enjoyed watching it. And I don't know. I mean, the word that comes out over and over is a word that I never used, unapologetic. And it fits me, actually. And listen, I hope that, I know that Charmin, she interviewed so many people. She interviewed so many people, because she and I, we only did a couple of interviews. But she spent so much time with the archives and interviewing people. And every time she would interview people, she would always say, you know, I'm learning so much about me right now while doing that. So if and she's tough, trust me, she's tough. She's got 2 Oscars, you know, Pakistani woman, you know, in a macho country. She's very, very strong. And for her to say that she was learning because at the end, you know, I'm 78 years old. 78. So I'm really old now. And so what is important, when you get old, you think, okay, you think about legacy, but what does it mean, legacy? Legacy is first and foremost the good that you have done and the people that you have touched and the family you created. And I forgot what I was going to say. That's also being old, forgetting.
No, but a big part of your life, which has come out through the film, is how important your family is and how your family, including your children, have shaped your journey in so many ways as well. And having their voices in the film was so important because as a working mother, as a single mother of 2 young children in the 1970s, to forge the path that you did, very few women were able to.
You know, I'm very lucky because actually my children, who are both parents of adults already, they actually, when I think of them, I found something that makes me very happy. You actually are the children you have. Remember that when your children grow up. You actually will see in your children the person that you are. And the most important thing that you can do for your children, as important as loving them, is making them independent. That is the biggest gift my mother gave me. She was tough. She was really tough. And, but she made me independent. She never said, be careful. She said, if you do that, what can the consequences be? She always put the responsibility on me. And that's very important. And yes, I was, when I was 27, I separated from my husband. I had 2 children who were 3 and 4. I had a business that was a very big business, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was traveling a lot, so it was a lot. And I also wanted to have boyfriends. And so there were a lot of things to deal with. And I did the best I could, and but the result came out good.
I love that you own all of that, because you have constantly reinvented yourself as you've gone.
I still am.
Yeah.
I still am. I'm inventing myself now.
And that is how I think when there was a setback in business or in life, you always found another thing that you would do to reinvent yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
But there are setbacks every day.
Yes.
I mean, it's not, and you, I mean, you just have to accept, you have to say, first of all, the things you have to get rid of is fear, shame, guilt, blame, and anger. No needed. Don't waste your time being angry. Don't waste your time being guilty. Don't waste your time being embarrassed. Don't. Be strict with yourself, but be you. Because there's no... So something didn't work out. Okay. It's because something else was meant to be. Okay, I'm going to tell you the story with my mother.
You wait, before you do that. Are you going to tell which story? I want to play
Left, right.
Okay, let's go with the left-right story, and then can I play something first?
Yes.
I'm going to play you another clip from the.
No, I think it's better that.
Okay, let's go. This is how it worked in direction, by
it will be more effective. Okay, so my mother, my mother was 21 years old. She grew up. No, she grew up in Salonika in Greece, but the family moved to Belgium. So she went to Brussels in a school, normal school, and everything, and but she happened to be Jewish. And so when she was about to get to high school, all of a sudden there were the racial laws, and she could no longer be in high school. Her headmistress loved her because she was a very good student, so she kept her as a student, but not registered. And what I found out recently, because my mother was arrested because she was in the resistance. But what I found out recently is that the headmistress was a big person in the resistance. So I think my mother was in the resistance because of her. Anyway, she got arrested, And when she got arrested, she said she was very worried that she was going to be tortured to have information about the resistance. She said, "Oh, I don't know anything. I'm Jewish." And the woman at the police station said, "Don't say you're Jewish because they will ship you away." Anyway, so they did arrest her. She went to jail. I mean, she went to this big military school that was a jail that is now a museum that you're going to see. And they had to wait until they were 1,000 and then they would ship them. But it was already, you know, it was already 1944. So by the time they were 500, they went transferred, they went to the cattle train, which you will see, and they went to Auschwitz. 4 days travel, 5 days travel, no light, no water, no food. You can imagine what it was. And in that cattle train, she became friends. She was 21. And she became friends with an older woman who was in her early 40s. And she spoke a little German, and so she thought, no matter what happens, I'm never going to leave this woman. So they arrive in Auschwitz-Birkenau. They arrive, they are all in a big line, and there's a soldier that selection, no? You go right, you go left, you go right, you go left. And way behind, on an elevated podium, there was this man in white who was only watching. He did not move. It turned out it was Joseph Goebbels. And so when turn came, the friend of my mother, the soldiers say, "You go right." And my mother, without being told what to do, followed her friend, and the soldier let her go. The man Goebbels, the angel of death, they call him, who had not moved the entire time, came down, took my mother, threw her on the other side, whipped her. And she looked at him with so much hate. He saved her life. Because the people on going into the right were going in the gas chamber. Wow. So the lesson that she always told me is that sometimes something you think is absolutely the worst is not. And every time my friends have little problem, I go with this big story, and they say, okay, I won't complain. And and my mother said, I had so much hate for him, so much hate. But after that, she never hated anyone else.
Yeah. Well, we're going to show you a clip of, we were with Diane in Belgium, in Brussels, and we took her to the museum. Can we play the clip, please?
My mother gets arrested in Belgium. 5 days in the cattle train. No food, no water, people, you know, throwing up, all of that. And she always told me, fear is not an option. When she was arrested, she took some cardboard and she wrote to her parents, and she threw it on the street, hoping that somebody would find it. And she never, you see, she said, "Merci beaucoup." She gave the address, and she wrote to her parents, "Mamika et toi, mon petit papa, votre petite Lily va partir. Où elle va, elle ne sait pas, mais Dieu est partout, n'est-ce pas? Alors, où qu'elle soit, jamais elle ne sera seule ni malheureuse. Je veux que vous soyez tous les deux très courageux. Je pars avec le sourire, je vous le jure." My mother is incredibly important in every cell of my being. Elle est où, la maman?
Only the ones in sepia are the ones who survive. So everybody in black and white did not survive.
She lived the horror that none of us can even imagine. So, but because of that, she wanted me to have a big life. And a big life I had. And she also told me never be a victim.
Yes.
And no matter what, never be a victim. And that's a good advice.
Dan, when you look back at your life, and as you watch the film, if I was to ask you what is going to be the Dan von Furstenberg legacy?
Ooh.
Not that you're done yet.
No.
But just...
No. It was certainly, I wanted to be a woman in charge. I became a woman in charge, blah, blah, blah. Then realized that to be a woman in charge is a commitment to yourself, blah, blah, blah. But now I'm adding the kindness component. Because I discovered, because it's not like when I was little, I was particularly interested about kindness. I wanted to be in charge. But then once you are in charge, you realize that you have a new power. I mean, you always do, but you have a power of kindness. And kindness is a currency, and you could use it just like money. And the more you use it, the more it makes babies. And I want to make kindness sexy, because usually you say, oh, she's kind, it's like she's an idiot. Well, it's not the case. So that's my new message. And I'm working on that. I would like to create the Republic of Kindness.
Yes, absolutely. And the world needs that more than anything else. You often say that you created the dress, the wrap dress, but the wrap dress also created you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I made that little dress, but that little dress gave me confidence, gave me financial security, and because it was a dress, gave confidence to a lot of other women. And so and generation after, and then every 20 years, it's the 20 years old who discover it. So, I don't know, that was my thing. But it's that thing that chose me. It's one of those things. But we all, you know, when you start life, there are all these doors. You don't know which is going to be your door. And sometimes it's not the most glamorous. That door wasn't glamorous. Marrying a prince, that was a glamorous door. I did both.
A big part of the film is Diane's choices in life, and I'm not going to play that clip, but is Diane's choices in life. As a woman, I love the fact that you've always told the truth. You've never had to hide a boyfriend or a mistake or a path that didn't work out for you. Where does that come from? And we can all learn.
I don't know where it came from, but I'm so thankful. I mean, there's no better insurance policy than saying the truth at all times. I mean, it may seem difficult on the spot, but it's so much easier after. So I don't know how it happened. But I have never lied, and I've taught my children not to lie. And because when you lie, you're really lying to yourself. I mean, I'm very skillful at telling the truth in my own way. But I don't lie.
The seduction. The seduction. One of the things that you have really embraced and grown into is the support that you have for other women, especially women on the front lines, women working in difficult countries, sometimes standing. There are women here today.
One of our team.
You know, when the camera would be out and I would be standing in a corner and sort of just observing what Diane was doing, I would see all these women gravitate to Diane in this most wonderful manner. And for each woman, you had a minute and a message. And that says a lot about who you are.
But you know what? Every person that I talk to, I learn something. I mean, I refuse. I hope I'm not condescending. I mean, I give a lot of advice, and my children and my grandchildren say, okay. They know it all by heart. And of course, I leave the room and they talk like I do. But I try not to be condescending, and I'm interested. I don't like clubs. I don't like that kind of social bullshit. But I do like intimacy. I am interested in people. Even during COVID, I met a lot of people because I read their book. I connect with them. I became friends with them via internet. So I learn. I'm learning just as much, you know. So you expand, you know. You connect. You expand your own horizon if you talk to people. I don't know. It's always interesting.
And where do you see now your DVF wrap dress, the brand, the awards, as you and I were discussing how you're trying to put all of this together in some way? Well,
after COVID, I had given the control of my business to my partner in China because we have 50 stores there. And we just took it back. So starting this month, we're back. I have a very good CEO, and I didn't really want to take it back, but it was losing its identity, and so I had to do it. So that's that. And then, well, as I said, I'm trying to package my experience, my knowledge, my archives, my connections, and so that it could be useful. Because, you know, we're only here for a little bit, and all we are is energy anyway. Yeah. So
Diane's archives are phenomenal. So in her home, when you go downstairs, there are rooms and racks meticulously documenting every single pivotal moment of your life. And what for me was most incredible, if you saw that in that clip, the letter that she was reading, that is an original letter written by her mother that had fallen.
And it's a letter that my mother, she always told me, you know, when I was in the truck going from the police station to the prison, and then from the prison to the train, they were in trucks. And she always told me that she pulled a little cardboard and wrote with a match. And I said, yeah, and I didn't believe it, truly. And after she died, she lived in the Bahamas for the last 10 years of her life. And her sister's son, my cousin, went there. I gave him the house for a few weeks. And he went there and he left behind a cardboard of photos that his mother had left him and that he thought I would like. And so I looked at them, most of the photos I knew, and at the bottom of the box, there was a very flat envelope, so flat, and it says Lily 1944. And I opened it. And those two notes that she would tell me about were there. And I don't think she knew that her parents had found the letters, because once they came back, nobody talked about anything, right? So the people, they didn't discuss anything. So she had no ideas that the notes she sent were actually got to her parents, and that her sister kept them, and it was in this envelope. And I am in my mother's house, her last house, and I'm opening this letter, and there's these two cardboards. And I mean, I don't get emotional very quickly, but I mean, that was really something. And her house is in the Bahamas, right in front of the blue turquoise water. So after I read it, I went into the water, and I speak a lot to myself. And I said, I am the daughter of a woman who went to the camp with a smile, because that's what she wrote to her parents. Of course, she did not go to the camp with a smile, but she wanted her parents to know.
We have a few minutes, and we're going to open it up to just a few questions from the floor. Yes. Do we have mics here that we can... Great. I think
she's there.
Yeah.
Hi, Diane. I'm Pia from the Philippines. I'm a filmmaker also. I'm from the Global Shapers community. So I want to re-echo that to the Global Shapers, since I can't find any Global Shaper here. Maybe my question is, what's your hope or your optimism for the younger generation?
Okay. Well, lately I'm very interested in YouTube, which is the biggest whatever. So I've been very in touch with very, very young people, you know, under 25, and Gen Z, and I have actually 3 grandchildren who are Gen Z, and I am actually, and I feel guilty, even though I told you not to be guilty. I don't feel good about me, my generation, the baby boomers, the condition in which we're leaving the world, right? But that generation coming, they are very smart, and they're quite wonderful, and they will all deal with this entirely different world that we don't, the artificial intelligence. And I know people are afraid of artificial intelligence, but it's here. And I personally have GPT has become one of my very best friends because I realized that it's not about just asking questions, but you can debate with it, and the more she knows about, I say obviously for me she's a girl, and she knows, and you can debate, and you can talk about philosophy, and so it's a whole other future that's coming, that everybody will have somehow this shadow friend. So you better get used to it. And of course, there's a lot of very weird things that are happening, and there's a wave of rage. There's a wave of machismo. And so the one thing we cannot be is angry about it. We have to absolutely seduce it. I mean, we cannot be angry, we cannot be aggressive. We have to be as much women as we can, which means nurture. We must think about always when you deal with a man that is aggressive, just think about how you raise your son. And that's why I said the word is agility.
We have very quickly, last question.
Very quick. I'm Paula Escobar, a Chilean journalist. So I wonder, have you suffered hostility being a woman in charge when you were beginning your career? And how do you think it's a smart way of dealing with, men, macho men that don't like women in charge? Thank you.
You know what? I never really felt hostility.
Maybe because you didn't choose to see it?
Maybe because, I don't know, maybe because I was seductive. I don't like, you don't throw your, my first husband, I got so successful so quickly that it was hard for him to deal with it. And so we separated, but we stayed very good friends. I stayed very good friends with everyone. And I can't remember having a fight with anyone. I don't have an enemy. But I make a point of it, I don't like enemies, and I try to...
Good.
But I'm not perfect. Trust me.
On that note, thank you everyone watching online, and thank you everyone for joining us here.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, welcome to one of the highlights of our annual meeting. It is really an honor and privilege to welcome back to Davos His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. In September, you said that the purpose of the Summit of the Future was to bring multilateralism back from the brink. The adaptation of the Pact for the Future was a pivotal moment to focus minds and attention on our collective response to changing the world. This year, the United Nations celebrates its 80th year, a testament to the vitality of the organization and its centrality for multilateral cooperation. The United Nations is more needed than ever, and thank you for your leadership. It is clear that global cooperation is stagnating, but the most pressing issues that we are faced with still need us to collaborate because they're transboundary. We do live in a world that is less predictable and more chaotic. We are grateful in this respect also for your personal efforts to maintain global dialogue, and the Forum remains steadfast in our commitment to work together towards a better future. Mr. Secretary General, dear Antonio, at the beginning of this year, I invite you to share with us your assessment of the state of the world. Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's good to be back in Davos. Your focus this year is on collaboration for the intelligent age, and it is a noble vision. But let's face it, when many people look around the world, they don't see much collaboration, and perhaps, to their minds, not enough intelligence. Despite progress on many fronts, investment in renewables, technological leaps, health advances, many of our world's problems are getting worse. We are living in an increasingly rudderless world. Last week, I delivered my annual priority speech to the General Assembly, and I said that our world is facing a Pandora's box of troubles. We face widening geopolitical divisions, rising inequalities, and assault on human rights. And we see a multiplication of conflicts, some of which are leading to the reshaping of different parts of the world, not least the Middle East. And there is finally a measure of hope when a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza takes place, and we are working to surge up desperately needed humanitarian aid. I was also just in Lebanon, where a cessation of hostilities is holding and a new government is taking shape after 2 years of stalemate. From the Middle East to the Ukraine to Sudan and beyond, we still face an uphill battle. But we will never give up in calling for peace, but peace grounded on values. The UN Charter, international law, including international humanitarian law, and the principles of sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity of states. Meanwhile, developing countries are in economic dire straits. Some are facing double-digit inflation rates, while interest payments in Africa are earning up 27% of all government revenues. On every front, our system of governance are often ill-equipped to deal with these challenges. Many were built for a different era, a different economy, and a different world. We are working to reform institutions for the 21st century, from the global financial architecture to the UN Security Council, two basic aspects of our Summit of the Future. But reforming institutions requires a reform in mindsets, because we face big challenges, existential challenges, and I'm not convinced leaders get it. Yes, we all understand the nature of an existential threat. Those of us who lived through the Cold War remember the decades spent living under the constant shadow of nuclear annihilation. Of course, the nuclear threat is still with us. But when it comes to existential threats, nuclear is no longer alone. Today we face two new and profound threats that demand far more global attention and action because they threaten to upend life as we know it: the climate crisis and the ungoverned expansion of artificial intelligence. First, climate chaos. I recently saw an analysis that exposed the grim irony. 13 of the world's biggest ports for oil supertankers will be overwhelmed by rising sea levels. Rising seas, which are caused by rising temperatures, and rising temperatures, which are overwhelmingly caused by burning fossil fuels. Our fossil fuel addiction is a Frankenstein monster, sparing nothing and no one. All around us, we see clear signs that the monster has become master. We just endured the hottest year and the hottest decade in history. 2024 is likely to be the first calendar year that's pushed back past 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Now, breaching this limit does not mean the long-term goal of keeping the rise in global temperature to 1.5 degrees is shot. It means we need to fight even harder to get on track, especially when we are seeing today sea level rise, heat waves, floods, storms, droughts and wildfires, and that are just a preview of the horror movie to come. A world where every economy feels the pain of supply chains severed, of infrastructure destroyed, of higher prices and higher insurance premiums, or no insurance at all. At the same time, another far more hopeful story is unfolding. Cheap, plentiful energy provided by renewables is an extraordinary economic opportunity, one that will benefit people in every country, and then that will make the end of the fossil fuel age inevitable, no matter how hard vested interests try to stop it. A number of financial institutions and industries are backtracking on climate commitments. And here at Davos, I want to say loudly and clearly that this is short-sighted. And paradoxically, it is selfish, but also self-defeating. You are on the wrong side of history. You are on the wrong side of science. And you are on the wrong side of consumers who are looking for more sustainability, not less. This warning certainly also applies to the fossil fuel industry and advertising, lobbying and PR companies who are aiding, abetting and greenwashing. Global heating is racing forward and we cannot afford to move backward. And government must keep their promise to produce new economy-wide national climate action plans this year, well ahead of COP30 in Brazil. And those plans must align with limiting the rise in global temperatures to 1.5 degrees, including by accelerating global energy transition. We also need a surge in finance for climate in developing countries to adapt to global heating, to slash emissions and seize the benefits of the renewables revolution. We need to tackle high capital costs that are leaving developing countries behind. And I also urge all businesses and financial institutions to create robust, accountable transition plans this year. These too must align with 1.5 degrees and with the full recommendations of the United Nations high-level expert group on net zero. To the corporate leaders who remain committed to climate action, your leadership is needed now more than ever. Do not back down. Stay on the right side of history. Now is the time to shift our collective efforts into overdrive and make 2025 2025 the biggest year yet for climate action. The second area of existential concern is ungoverned artificial intelligence. Yes, AI holds untold promise for humanity, revolutionizing learning, advancing healthcare, and diagnosing illness earlier, supporting farmers with smarter tools to boost productivity, clearing landmines, and better targeting aid in times of crisis. These are real results happening right now. But with this promise comes profound risk, especially if AI is left ungoverned. AI can be used as a tool of deception. It can disrupt economies and labor markets, undermine trust in institutions, and have chilling effects on the battlefield. And AI could deepen inequalities by excluding those without the resources or tools to benefit from its promise. Once again, collaboration is critical. The Global Digital Compact, adopted in September at the United Nations, offers a roadmap to harness the immense potential of digital technology and close digital divides. It also brings the world together around a shared vision for artificial intelligence, one where this technology serves humanity, not the other way around. The concept establishes the first universal agreement on the governance of AI that brings every country to the table. It includes the creation of an independent international scientific panel on AI, pooling expertise to bridge knowledge gaps and help every nation make the most informed AI policy decisions. The Compact also calls for a periodic global dialogue on AI governance as an inclusive space for stakeholders to come together under the auspices of the United Nations. And it also foresees a network of capacity-building initiatives for developing countries, which have the most at stake as AI-driven systems grow and expand. And we must collaborate so that all countries and people benefit from AI's promise and potential to support development and social and economic progress for all. By investing in affordable internet, digital literacy, and the infrastructure that allows every country to harness AI's potential. By helping developing countries use AI to grow small businesses, improve public services, and connect communities to new markets. And by placing human rights always at the center of AI-driven systems. The United Nations is committed to leading these efforts. And we are working with governments, industry, and civil society to ensure that AI becomes a tool of opportunity, inclusion, and progress for all people. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to wake up to these existential challenges and face them head-on and transform them in sources of progress and welfare for everybody. As a global community, we must live up to this great responsibility, and let's do so by working as one, in collaboration, as the motto of the World Economic Forum. Thank you, and I look forward to our discussion today.
So, Mr. Secretary General, great to have you back. One can look at the world as like a glass half empty or a glass half full. So let's start with the latter and we come back to the first. You just came back from Lebanon. It is now a president elected. There is a ceasefire, as you mentioned, in Gaza, start of releasing hostages. There is a new government in Damascus. We know your special envoy is there today working on that. Currently, there hasn't been an escalation leading to a war between Israel and Iran that would have a huge impact. So where do you see the Middle East in a year when you come back to Davos?
Well, I know it will be deeply reshaped, but I do not know exactly in what direction all the different aspects will be reshaped. First, Gaza. I think it's important, first of all, to recognize that the ceasefire in Gaza is the product of the work of many, and I would praise the United States, Qatar and Turkey for their efforts for months and months and months to obtain the release of hostages, that, by the way, should be immediate and unconditional, and also to obtain the ceasefire. But the negotiations were dragging. And then, all of a sudden, it happened. I think there was a large contribution of the robust diplomacy of the, at the time, President-elect of the United States. I feel that when we had the position of Israel still reluctant to the ceasefire just 2 days before it happened, and then all of a sudden there was an acceptance, I think that we have witnessed an example of robust diplomacy that is something that we must recognize.
Do you expect more robust diplomacy?
I think we will have more examples of robust diplomacy. Let's see now in what direction. But what is not yet clear is what is the future of the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians. One possibility is to move into annexation of the West Bank and probably a kind of a limbo situation in Gaza, which of course is against international law and would mean there will never be peace in the Middle East. The other possibility is to be still on time with a revitalized Palestinian Authority and an open approach by the Israeli government to still be able to look into a two-state solution. It's not yet clear how things will develop. In Lebanon, I believe that the ceasefire is holding, and my hope is that we will witness a Lebanon that will be able to finally have an effective government. And we know the Lebanese, if the war ends at noon, at 1 o'clock, they start rebuilding. So the Lebanese people have an enormous potential. So I'm optimistic about Lebanon. But we are still not yet we still do not yet have a guarantee that this ceasefire will hold and will lead to a final peace agreement. I think Syria is the big question mark. We have a new government that is saying all the right things, but at the same time it's a government that still corresponds only of what we had in Idlib, and in organizations that have a tradition that is not exactly of the members of the choir of a church. So there are many questions, and we see some signals that the openness and tolerance that is said really will translate itself into reality. So we hopefully will have a Syria with a government that represents all the communities in Syria, which means that the problem between Turkey and the Kurds will also be solved, and that allows for a full integration of Syria in the international community, but we still have a strong risk of fragmentation and a strong risk of extremism in at least parts of the Syrian territory. So Syria is still a question mark, but it is in the interest of us all to engage in order to make things move in the direction of an inclusive form of governance in Syria in which all minorities will feel represented. And I think some gesture must be made, namely in relation to the sanctions, in order to help to make it possible.
Incentivize?
I think it's a quid pro quo, but I believe the first step now must see to create some relief in the sanctions system that is causing a lot of suffering to the Syrian people.
And we've already seen 200,000 Syrians coming back to Syria, but we also, as you said, SG, is a lot at stake, because we've seen in the past that walking the talk has not necessarily been happening, and it's really a lot at stake now with inclusiveness. You have the Kurds, you have the Alawites, you have Christians, you have Shiites, so it's complex.
As I said, we might have a good solution in which all feel represented and the contradictions are overcome, or a fragmentation with extremism still ruling parts of the territory. Let's hope that it's the first option that wins. And then you have the most relevant question, which is Iran and the relations between Iran, Israel, and the United States. And here, my hope is that the Iranians understand that it is important to once and for all make it clear that they will renounce to have nuclear weapons. At the same time that they engage constructively with the other countries of the region to have a new security architecture in the region with full respect of the independence, the territorial integrity, non-interference in the region, and with that having a so-called great bargain that allows them to be fully integrated in the global economy. This is my hope. But it's still possible that things do not go in this direction, and that we might have an escalation, and an escalation that could be a dramatic confrontation engulfing the whole region.
And that wouldn't only affect the Gulf region or the Middle East. That would have huge global impact. But you mentioned robust diplomacy related to Gaza. We also heard that President Trump has said that he wants peace and stability. That was the readout from the conversation he also had with Xi Jinping on Saturday. And we were very close to a full-fledged war between Israel and Iran in the fall. So I guess also on the Israeli side, they will need to work very closely with the new administration on their approach to Iran. And there's also different camps in the Republican Party when it comes to how to deal with Iran.
But my feeling is that the first step now must come from Iran. Because if not, we risk to have indeed an escalation. And I hope that Iran understands that it is useful to have this first step, and that it doesn't make sense at all to bet on the possibility, because it's not even a reality, or the perception that Iran is aiming at having nuclear weapons. I think to make it clear once and for all that that will not happen, and to engage, as I said, constructively for a new security architecture in the region, respecting the independence and of all the other countries, would be a step that would allow the full integration of Iran in the global economy, and would, I hope, once and for all, pacify this, which is one of the most, I would say, serious risks in global peace and security.
And coming back to Gaza, the implementation of the first phase is happening now. But there is also a second phase. There are still things that have modalities that have to be negotiated. But when you look at risks, also we see currently a deterioration of the situation in the West Bank. So, of course, the PA is also seen to play a role in the next phase of the implementation of Gaza. So it, of course, will be interesting also to see this new administration's view on the two-state solution, their Abraham's Accords, Saudi Arabia having said that there is no joining of the Abraham Accord without a path towards a two-state solution. But the immediate challenge is now really on the West Bank, because we have seen really deterioration of the security situation there, and then the path for reconstruction of Gaza.
I think there is a win-win solution, and that win-win solution is that the ceasefire holds, the hostages go on being released, and the massive distribution of aid takes place. First day, 640 trucks. Second day, 930 trucks. It was proven that when restrictions disappear, aid is provided, as we always said. And this is important. It is a success story. Now this success story must translate itself into a success story in the next phases. And the next phase is leading to a situation of permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and a situation in which a transition can be established in Gaza, allowing for the reunification of the occupied Palestinian territories, and allowing for a serious negotiation of a political solution based on the two states. This is the win-win situation. But there is another possibility. And the other possibility is for Israel, feeling emboldened by the military successes that it has had, to think that this is the moment to do the annexation of the West Bank and to keep the Gaza in a kind of a limbo situation with an unclear form of governance. It is clear for me that Israel is not fundamentally interested in Gaza, it's fundamentally interested in the West Bank. Now, that would be a total violation of international law, and that would create a situation in which I think the Abrahamic Accords would be undermined completely, and that would mean that we would never have a real stable peace in the Middle East.
So one of the challenges, Secretary General, that we're faced with is in the more fragmented, polarized world is also this notion of proxy wars. Proxy wars. I'm thinking about what we're seeing now in Africa, in Sudan, Somalia, also in the Sahel. I guess that this is something that keeps you up at night. It's hard to address, it's hard to attribute, but also for Syria, this is probably one of the real impasses also there if you don't have an integration, because then you can have a war going on for decades.
Well, we live in a situation where the geopolitical divides are deep, the superpowers are deeply divided, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, of course, the most serious problem, but with the China-US relationship being, as you know, very deteriorated, and we could have worse with the trade issues that appear in the horizon. So these huge geopolitical divides have created a situation in which there is total impunity. As the superpowers are not able to coordinate their action in relation to global peace and security, the truth is that in any part of the world, anyone feels that they can do whatever they want, nothing will happen to them. And we are seeing this in Sudan. No, I mean, two groups killing each other, fighting each other, creating an horrible situation for the people in Sudan, and nothing happens to them. Total impunity. Now, this is the situation that I believe we need to correct, because this is what makes these wars by proxy happen. And you see that in each of the situations you have 4 or 5 countries that interfere with the conflict, be it in Libya, be it in Sudan, be it in the Sahel.
Somalia.
We
have the president here on the first row.
So, I mean, it is absolutely essential to independently of the geopolitical divides that exist, to create a situation in which there is real accountability in relation to the dramatic violations of human rights and international humanitarian law we are seeing in the world.
So, coming to a close, it's a paradox, though, isn't it, that in a world where more and more of the challenges are transboundary, being future pandemics, climate change, as you mentioned also in your speech, making sure that technology works in the interest of humankind, also with cybercrime, but also in all these regional conflicts that are so interconnected. We do have the Security Council. And of course, there is criticism that it is not the best mood in the Security Council, but it is a place where the big powers still meet. And it's a paradox that in a situation where all these challenges are only solved in a multilateral context, the appetite is not always there. So it first makes your job even more complex. But do you feel there are a few opportunities and silver linings now in the coming years to even in a world where each nation follow mainly their national interest, there are areas where there's so strong overlap of the interest that you can push things through?
Well, first of all, let's look at the Security Council. The problem of the Security Council is a problem of effectiveness, but it's also a problem of legitimacy. The Security Council, in the 5 permanent members, has 3 European members, whether people like it or not. France, UK and Russia are European countries. Now, 3 in 5 of a continent that is what it is doesn't make any sense anymore. So it is absolutely essential to have a reform of the Security Council, to make the Security Council more representative of today's world and to make it more effective. This was one of the central questions of the debate in the Summit of the Future. But beyond that, what I believe is that there are things that will tend, in my opinion, to unite. And I have a lot of hope of the positive impacts of science and the positive impacts of, I would say, technological development. We can have different positions, but renewables became the cheapest way to produce electricity.
In 10 years?
And so independently of the opinions that people might have, those that are now investing in fossil fuels, in my opinion, are investing in stranded assets. I'm totally convinced that the oil and gas that exist in the world today, independently of new discoveries, will never be spent. And so sooner or later, I believe that the realities created by the scientific and technological evolution will make it inevitable, even for reasons of selfish analysis, will make it inevitable for people to take the right decisions. And that is one of my hopes. The second hope is that the youth of today has a different perspective and a different vision of the world than the youth of our generations. They are more cosmopolitan and they are more sensitive to the questions that are related to the well-being of our planet and the well-being of the international community.
So there are silver linings.
I think that the question is not to be optimistic or pessimistic. The question is to be determined. We need to be determined in making the values and principles in which we believe win. And if we are determined to fight for the right thing, if we are on the right side of history, I believe in the end we'll get what we want.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General.
All the best.
All the best. Thank you.
Military participation of EU member states experts, we have supported the establishment of the IAEA safety missions at all Ukrainian nuclear power plants. A second priority is to advance Ukraine's integration into the EU energy market. Here, we reached a milestone in 2022 with the synchronization of Ukraine's grid into the continental European network. This allowed us to increase the capacity for EU electricity exports to Ukraine and Moldova with up to 1,700 megawatts on a commercial basis and 250 megawatts on an emergency basis, while imports from Ukraine are set at 550 megawatts. And last, but certainly not least, it is our priority to decarbonize energy systems. In this regard, Ukraine's National Energy and Climate Plan, adopted in June 2024, provides a very clear blueprint for a green recovery. So, security, integration, and decarbonization. These are three of our key priorities. And that is why I am very delighted to be here, because with the agreement being announced today, DTEC investors are making a huge contribution to each of these priorities. You're supporting Ukraine's energy security and resilience. By the end of next year, this wind farm will provide safe, clean energy to over 900,000 homes across the country. Secondly, this agreement strengthens EU integration, connecting and combining resources from one side of Europe to the other. And finally, you are supporting decarbonization. The addition of 64 new turbines will make it not only the largest wind farm in Ukraine, but also in Eastern Europe. So I strongly welcome this agreement. It is true that the winter has brought us and will bring us many challenges, but an agreement like this reminds us that the spring is not far away. Thank you so much.
Commissioner, thank you so much. You mentioned Denmark, so let me go to Minister Botskov, a vantage point from Denmark.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's almost 2 months now since we met last time in Kiev, Julia, and I must say the world has changed, really, but the need for support and help to Ukraine and for the peace and safety of Ukrainians are still the same. We brought with us nearly 2 months ago, the biggest Danish business delegation ever to Ukraine. It is a picture of the strategy that the Danish government have chosen from the beginning, that we will not wait for peace and security, we will invest in Ukraine now. And we have taken that stand relatively clear. When Mr. Jørgensen was in his position in government, we did a lot of work together on exactly that, trying to give the Ukrainians a positive view of the future, invest in, for example, critical infrastructure, help them have a more or less normal day, even though it is terrible what we are seeing and what you are going through. So the Danish strategy is relatively clear. We are not waiting for peace. We are waiting for more to come to invest in Ukraine. And we are helping them with that. And this project here is just another project in that line. Bringing, as I said 2 months ago, the biggest Danish business delegation to Ukraine. There will come concrete projects out of that. And what we see now is by far the biggest project and Danish investment in Ukraine. It's an enormous project, and it follows a clearly strategy that we want to invest more, for example, in the critical infrastructure. We want to do whatever we can to help private companies to invest, to be a part of the Ukrainian future. Because what we are seeing now is a terrible and gruesome war, and the signal that we are sending here today is that we are standing together against what Putin, for more than a decade now, have tried to do with Ukraine. So we are together for an important investment. It is an important investment not only for Ukraine, but also for the Danish company Vestas. And I want to thank Vestas for the involvement in this project here, for the cooperation that we have had. You will now be able to deliver wind turbines to one of the biggest projects in Ukraine. I want to thank your partner and our partner, DTEC, for the involvement in the project that will deliver safe power to around 700,000 Ukrainian homes. So it is an important project, and it is a picture that we stand together for the freedom and safety of Ukraine, and we stand together against the brutality that Putin is now also in these minutes that we're sitting here again trying to hurt Ukraine with. So I'm extremely glad to be a part of the announcement here today, and see it as a picture of the strategy that the Danish government had chosen from the beginning, that we'll not wait with our help, relief help, humanitarian help, military help, civil help, and business support until we see peace. We have to be there now, and this is also that's what is also in that picture we see this project here. So thank you.
Minister, thank you. With the governmental leaders, we've built a little bit of suspense. So now going to Mr. Timchenko and Mr. Andersen, tell us a little more about the investment which you're announcing today. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here in the fields of World Economic Forum to announce the largest investment in Ukraine during the war. We reached agreement with our financial partners led by Export Credit Agency of Denmark, FORO, and with Vestas as a supplier of wind turbines to build the second phase of Telegurskaya wind power station. The total volume of investment, 450 million euro. We will build 384 megawatt of wind capacity so that we complete construction of the largest wind farm not only in Ukraine but also in Eastern Europe, which in total will produce 500 megawatt of wind capacity. Agreement is reached, and we start construction immediately. So by the end of next year, we'll have full capacity operational. And as it was already said, 100,000 of homes in Ukraine will be with green energy. And my greatest appreciation to government of Denmark. It is impossible to even think about this huge, very ambitious project without all support by all means. Financial support, the company you should be proud of, Vestas, is a world leader in wind turbines production. And of course, great appreciation to our government, Yulia Sviridenko, and all support we feel during these years of the war, and all support to realize such ambitious projects. To be honest, this scale and size of the project can be called ambitious even during peacetime. But to build during the war, as we already demonstrated by commissioning the first phase in 2023, what we've done with Vestas, we can call this extraordinary achievement and demonstration how partnership can work. And I'm talking about public-private partnership in structuring, because this is unique financial structure which allowed us to keep construction. And of course, our partnership with Vestas. We opened the whole wind industry in Ukraine 15 years ago by building together the first wind park called Botio. And after 15 years, we put more ambitious goals and continue construction under such an extreme conditions in Ukraine. And I'm sure that together we explore all potential of Ukraine in wind parks, in clean energy, and as President Zelensky said, we will make huge contribution to make Ukraine as a green power hub for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, thank you so much. It goes without saying this would have had no chance in making it possible without the support of Ukrainian, Danish government and EU. So a big thank you here on stage to you, Julia, and to you, Dan, and to you, Morten, representing this. And having said that, I know Peter Lundqvist and two of the CEOs of the banking world, of Danske Bank and SEB. It wouldn't have been possible without you all committed and leaned into this. Then when it comes to the concrete project, and this is one of those things we all talk about, how public and private partnerships should work in practice. Here is what I call a real workbook. It can be taken out and it can be copied. As you are rightly saying, it's not every day we get a chance to celebrate a total project of 500 megawatt to the tune of 450 million euro, Maxim. But I also think here it demonstrates that the wind and the renewable energy for Ukraine, which had such a large potential, has proven that it is short-term resilient against what is happening around a wind park today. It has also the means of sending a very strong signal that this is part of the long-term recovery. So this is raising the hope and the light in the middle of the darkness of that electricity and more electricity is coming into Ukraine, and not least the societies and especially the kids, which is so much hit by not having energy. I think when it goes to collaboration and also the link to EU competitiveness, which is such a big topic for everyone right now, it also illustrates that if we really align together as both public and private companies, actually everything is possible. And when I look at you, Maxim, I have to say today marks a little bit of an end of sort of a long process that has lasted approximately around 18 months. I wouldn't say every week, but then maybe every second week we have had the word, this is never going to happen, because now we have hit another bump on the road. But you never rested from the path, you never deviated from it. And today, a really, really big thank you to you as a person. You are relentless in driving this forward, and we will relentlessly driving this from factories into the field, and then not stopping until we see the electricity hitting the homes, as you're rightly mentioning, Dan and Morten, to nearly a tune of 1 million homes in Ukraine that is really needing the resilience. So it has turned out to be a partnership between DTEC and investors, but I will also say I have for many months spoken more to you than I've spoken to my wife. So that probably also illustrates that it has gone from a partnership that also laid the foundation for a very close friendship that will last for many years to come. And I'm sure when we start construction, there'll be 1 or 2 things that doesn't work to plan, and then we will need that friendship. So a big congratulations to everyone around here, and we are proud to be a chosen partner to it.
Thank you so much. I now open the floor for any questions there may be. We have a couple of minutes left. If there are any questions here. We're also live streaming. Yes, please, if you can introduce yourself and say who the question is for.
Hi, this is Meloka Kitamets from Nikkei. I have a question for Mr. Timchenko. You've announced a big battery storage project a week ago. So can I ask you if the wind turbine project and the battery storage project are linked, or would you need to invest additionally to store the electricity that you are planning?
Yes, we announced the other project, 200 megawatt battery storage project. They are not linked with wind park, but I think it's next step. So we will build wind farm first, and then we think about co-location so that we install battery storage to have proper profile of power production.
Thank you. Anyone else before we wrap up? Good. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to those who were dialing into this and watching our web stream. And congratulations, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just one thing before we get started with our distinguished guest. This is being recorded for my Sunday show, so I would appreciate it if people would not show either very loud signs of approval or disapproval. It would just make it easier if we don't have any noise from the audience. It's a great pleasure to be able to do it, and so I hope you'll make it possible. Let's get started. Joining me now, of course, is a man who needs no introduction, probably the most famous visible face of Iran over the last 3 decades that people have encountered. Deputy Foreign Minister, Ambassador to the UN, now Vice President. Javad Zarif, pleasure to have you on.
Good to be with you.
Let me begin by telling you what it looks like to me right now in terms of Iran's position in the region. I think one could make an argument that Iran has never been in a weaker position. You made a huge bet on Assad in Syria, enormous amount of money, arms, militias. Assad is gone. Hezbollah, a key ally in Lebanon, has been decapitated by my count 3 times over, decimated in terms of its force. You have relations with Hamas. Hamas leadership has been destroyed. Its tunnel infrastructure has been destroyed. The whole idea of the axis of resistance, these militia groups, these sub-state actors that were going to push back against Israel, against the Gulf Arabs, perhaps American interests, it all seems to be much, much weaker than it was before. I'm sure you're going to disagree, so tell me why.
Well, first of all, let me make 2 points, because we don't have much time. First point, in 1982, if you can remember, Sharon invaded Lebanon, pushed all the way into Beirut, because in 78 he pushed all the way until the Litany River in order to prevent the Palestinians from firing into Israel. And then in 82 he went all the way to Beirut in order to basically decimate the Palestinian resistance. If you remember, he sent Arafat to exile, to Tunisia.
Tunis.
So what happened? From 1981 to 1987, Islamic Jihad was born in 81, Hezbollah was born in 82, and Hamas was born between 85 and 87. So I wouldn't suggest anybody to start rejoicing over destroying Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Palestinian resistance, or to cutting Iran's arms, because the resistance will stay as long as the occupation stays, as long as repression stays. Resistance to Israel, to Israeli occupation, to apartheid, to genocide, existed before the Iranian Revolution. It came to being reinforced exactly at a time when Israel and Sharon believed that they had wiped out the resistance. I think right now, as you look at Gaza, Hamas is still there. Netanyahu did not achieve his goal of destroying Hamas. Hamas is still there. Israel had to come to a ceasefire, temporary, I hope it will be permanent, for the sake of 50,000 people who were massacred, genocide by Israel, so that there won't be another 50,000. But resistance is not dead. I can tell you that the wishes for the resistance to go away has been based on a misrepresentation, a framing by Israel, that this is not an Israeli-Palestinian issue, but an Israeli-Iranian issue. That's number one. Number two, Go back to 1981, 82, and move all the way to 2023, 2024. Give me a single instance when this resistance operated on Iranian behalf. They always worked for their own cause, even at our expense. They never carried our orders. We didn't know about October 7th. Actually, we were supposed to have a meeting with the Americans on JCPOA renewal on October 9th, which was undermined and destroyed by this operation.
But then it makes the case that this has been a very unwise investment for Iran to be funding all these militias which are not even doing Iran's interests.
Well, let's not talk about funding, because a lot of people are funding a lot of things and they're not successful. But let's focus on the fact that we have supported people's rights. Now, Israeli actions are a matter of jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, in the case of genocide, a matter of criminal jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court in terms of Netanyahu and the Minister of Defense. So, and they cannot come to Davos. The president can come to Davos because he's a nobody in Israel, to reciprocate what he said yesterday. Otherwise, he would have had to go to The Hague instead of Davos. This is the reality on the ground. People will continue to resist. Now, why am I making this statement? Because if you want to resolve the problem of Palestine, you should not look at Iran. You should look at the Palestinian issue. As long as the Palestinian issue is there, the struggle will be there, the resistance will be there, and there will be support from the international community, including from Arab allies of the United States.
I take your point, but if I may, with respect, you haven't answered my question, which is about Iran's position. You've lost a key ally in Assad, you've lost, or at least you have a much weaker ally in Hezbollah. Your air defenses have been destroyed. We have reports or you tell me if it's not true, we have reports of generals in Iran talking about the fact that they've paid a very heavy price for the support of Assad. Is it not true that you are in a much weaker position?
But let me make, again, a couple of points. We fought Iraq when we didn't have any air defense, when we didn't have any weapons, when the United States was providing Iraq with AWACS, when the French were providing Iraq with Exocet missiles and Mirage fighters, when Germany was providing Iraq with chemical weapons, when Britain was providing Iraq with Chieftain tanks, when Russia, Soviet Union at that time, was providing Iraq with MiGs and Scud missiles, when China at that time was providing Iraq with Silkworm missiles. We didn't have anything. We stood against Iraq for 8 years, and we did not give up an inch of our territory. So, first of all, the story about destroying our air defense is a story, and there is a reason behind it.
You're saying it didn't happen?
No, we suffered, but it didn't mean that we lost our air defense. And secondly, we have fought against a well-equipped army, equipped by everybody, when nobody was giving us any weapons for 8 years, and we didn't lose an inch of our territory. And that's something that didn't happen in Iran for 220 years. For the previous 220 years, we had lost every war in which we engaged. This is the first government in Iran that has not lost any territory in the past 2.5 centuries. So we're not talking about a weak government. But I answered your question by saying that find me a single instance when these groups, which are, I think, erroneously called Iranian proxies, operated on our behalf. If they did not operate on our behalf, what do they do to our strength? Now, you can tell me that we worked on their behalf diplomatically and that gave us strength. But we never tried to cash our investment in the region. You now tell me that this was a foolish investment. I believe that you and I belong to a school of thought in social science which does not believe in only material power. We, both of us, believe in ideational power. The fact that Iran can, in fact, move people in the streets in many parts of the world gives us power, with or without Hezbollah.
But let me ask you about that.
We still possess that power. We can still move people, inspire people, as we did in the beginning of the revolution. Now, it may not be as good as it was, because we have our own failures domestically, and we need to work on them. Now, let me tell you what I wrote in Foreign Affairs, and you've read it. Now, for us, is the time to move forward. We have been looking at our surrounding as a threat because of our history. Now, we have proven time and again that we will not be an easy food to swallow, because we used to be. I mean, the Brits, the Russians took over Iran, imposed on us a famine after the Second World War. Nobody thinks of Iran as such an easy place to carry out their whims. So we can move forward.
So let's talk about
move forward based on opportunity rather than based on threats.
So, but let's talk about that. Let me start by asking. U.S. intelligence says Iran is weeks, sometimes they say days away from the breakout capacity to build a nuclear weapon. Is that true, and will you?
Well, had we wanted to build a nuclear weapon, we could have done it a long time ago. But a program to build nuclear weapons is not going to be like our program. You build nuclear weapons in hidden laboratories that are not subject to international inspections. By the way, people who are worried about our nuclear program, like the Israelis, they say we are days away from a nuclear weapon. So why didn't they welcome JCPOA? JCPOA, in the worst analysis, would have kept Iran away from nuclear weapons for at least 15 years. So people who are saying that Iran will have, I mean, Netanyahu has been saying from 1994, 96, that Iran will have a nuclear weapon in 6 months. Now we're about what, 30 years later, and we still are a couple of days away from nuclear weapons. This is what we call in our jargon, securitization, not security. Iran is not a security threat. Some people want to frame Iran as a security threat. Iranophobia, Islamophobia are tools to carry out programs like the genocide in Gaza, always saying that we're doing this against Iran. But you're doing it against children in Gaza.
Let me ask you about the Foreign Affairs article you wrote. You talked about how under Trump there may be an opportunity for a deal with Iran. I was surprised by that because Trump is, after all, the person who pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Why do you think that the guy who pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal and reimposed American sanctions on Iran and said, I want maximum pressure on Iran, why is there an opportunity?
Well, there's always hope that people will choose rationality. But in order to be more serious, let me give you a chronology. John Bolton went to Paris in February of 2017.
At this point, he's Trump's national security advisor?
No. February, he wrote an article in, I think, late 2016, giving a blueprint for Trump to get out of JCPOA. In February of 2017, he went to Paris, spoke to this gathering of MEK. I think his tax return shows that he received $40,000 for it. They tell me that he lied on his tax sheet, so he may have received...
This is a group that advocates the overthrow
removal
of the
Iranian government, was on the terrorist list of the United States for some time. Now, he said in that speech that we will celebrate next time this year in Tehran. He was appointed National Security Advisor in April. Pompeo was confirmed as Secretary of State on April 26th. He went to Israel on April 28th and asked Netanyahu to put out that show about the documents that they had uncovered from Iran. Trump pulled out of JCPOA on May 8th. You look at this sequence of events. And I have reason from what I heard from leaders of other countries, that they had convinced Trump of two things. One, Iran was crumbling, and a sudden withdrawal from JCPOA would be the last nail on Iran's coffin. Second, that with these documents, forged documents that Netanyahu is showing, there would be an international support for the United States to withdraw from JCPOA. Both extremely wrong assumptions of Trump's advisors, not Trump himself. Now, I hope that this time he kicked Bolton out, he kicked Robin Hook out, he kicked Pompeo out, because Pompeo was seeking an appointment. Hook was there until, what, yesterday? He withdrew the Secret Service support from John Bolton on a bogus charge that Iran was trying to kill him, which has been bogus from the very beginning. So I hope that this time around, a Trump 2 will be more serious, more focused, more realistic, to know that his withdrawal the withdrawal that was imposed on him, and he has said it, that he did it for Israel. And he has said now that he won't do anything for any other country. He said it on his inauguration. After he withdrew from JCPOA, Iran has gained much more nuclear capability based on your breakout calculations. I don't do breakout calculations because we don't want to break out. But based on American breakout calculations, we were a year away from a nuclear weapon when Bolton wrote that whatever executive order to get Trump out, memorandum to get Trump out. And today, even the Americans say we are a few days away. So in terms of being able to dissuade Iran, it has failed. Now, it has imposed heavy economic cost on the Iranian people. Of course, the Iranian government is suffering, but the Iranian people and the most vulnerable groups in Iran are suffering the most.
There are people in Washington who talk about a new deal, a new Iran nuclear deal, but one that would also include a pledge by Iran not to continue supporting proxies or groups
we never had proxies.
All right, not supporting groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and etc. Would Iran consider such a deal?
You see, the United States was always insisting that we should have a regional deal. Now we have a regional deal. We have good relations with Saudi Arabia. We have good relations with the United Arab Emirates. I have proposed in an article I recently wrote in Economist, after my foreign affairs article, that we should have a new arrangement in this region. I call it Mawadda, Muslim West Asia Dialogue Association, MWADA, which is the acronym will be Mawadda, and Mawadda in Arabic means amity. So, and the title in Economist was Amity instead of Enmity. Let's do that. So we're there. And you say our arms are cut off. So why do they worry about them? If Iran doesn't have any strength in the region, if Iran's arms...
No, but then a pledge not to help them rebuild would be... Would you consider that?
The problem is that's the wrong address. The address for the resistance in the region is in Tel Aviv, is in Israeli occupation, genocide, apartheid, and violation of Palestinian rights. The address is not in Tehran. The United States and Israel for the next 50 years can push Iran, that will not resolve the Palestinian issue. They want to resolve the Palestinian issue. The only solution, and I think everybody who has spoken here in Davos 2025, probably with the exception of the gentleman you interviewed yesterday, have insisted that the only solution is a viable Palestinian state. Unless that solution is reached, there'll be more resistance, there'll be more groups, with or without Iran's help. Iran has always supported struggle of people for their human rights, for their right to self-determination, and will continue to support that. But that's not the cause. There has to be a struggle before you can support it. Your support does not create the struggle. There is a struggle. There is a resistance caused by the fact that there is an occupation, aggression, violation of human rights.
Let me ask you about something going on in Iran with regard to human rights. I was in Saudi Arabia a few times in the last year, and Saudi women came to me and said they were very proud that now in Saudi Arabia, women had far more rights than in Iran. This president, the new president, has come in and said he was going to make it possible for women to wear whatever they wanted. They did not have to wear the scarves. The morality police would be prevented from what I regard as the harassment of women. Doesn't seem to have happened yet.
Well,
will it?
Well, you see, I'm proud to have had a role in the formation of Iranian cabinet, and we have 4 women in our cabinet at the cabinet level.
Can they attend the cabinet meetings with their hair uncovered?
Well, they choose not to, because they...
Is that a choice
they believe in the law of the country. Now, if you go to the streets of Tehran, you see that there are women who are not covering their hair. It's against the law, but the government has decided not to put women under pressure. And this was a promise that President Pezeshkian made, and the promise is being observed. He did not implement the law with the consent of the leadership. I don't mean the leader, the leadership of the country, the head of parliament, the head of the judiciary and others, National Security Council. So we're moving in the right direction. We have, for the first time, our ethnic minorities are governors in Iranian Kurdistan, in Iranian Baluchistan. We have a minority member of the cabinet. So these are things that I'm sure President Pezeshkian is proud of, and as a person who was responsible for the formation of cabinet, I'm very proud. It's not enough, Farid. It's a step in the right direction.
There are hardliners in Iran who don't like you.
So?
In fact, you are currently, I don't understand the complete specifics, but they have taken you to court, or they have filed cases in court to have you dismissed from your current job.
Yeah.
Is this going to succeed? I mean, basically the argument is your children have American citizenship.
My children were born in the U.S.,
so they're both right citizens.
When I was a student.
Will these efforts succeed? And more importantly, doesn't it reveal what the president of Israel said, which is that the hardliners, who are often seen as controlling core security policy, don't trust people like you, that they're going to make policy, and what you say at places like Davos doesn't matter because they're the guys actually running things?
Well, actually they're not, because I'm here. Had they been running the show, I would be, I mean, according to their visions, not even free to walk in the streets, not the streets of Davos, but not even the streets of Tehran. But it shows that Iran is not a uni-voice, single-voice society. We have many voices, many views, and we cannot shut them down. Now, in other places, At one time, they shut down the voices of progress. At another time, they shut down the voices of tradition. We don't. Voices of progress, voices of, I don't like these labels, but voices that like more open policies are very active. Voices that are against us are also active. They lose in the elections, they win in the elections. Last election, we lost. This election, we won, but it was a very close competition. And first time in my life that I've done anything domestic was during this campaign, and I had to go to town after town campaigning for President Pezeshkian, then candidate Pezeshkian. And I know for a fact, I've sensed it with all my being that this was a tough race. A real race with a real choice. It would have been much different under Pezeshkian's competitor, under his rival or whatever in the election. If today, instead of President Pezeshkian, you had President Jalili, you might have had a major war going on in the region. So there is plurality in Iran. There are differences of views in Iran. I respect these different views. I don't accept people who are running smear campaigns against me to be shut down, or to be quieted by the government. Because if we do it to them, tomorrow they'll do it to us. And they have more power to do it. So I think it's good that they are taking me to court, not taking me, taking the government to court to try to dismiss me, because they believe my appointment is a violation of the law. That's their interpretation. We have a different interpretation, and if the case goes to the court, if the court decides that it has jurisdiction to hear it, the government will present its argument. If the court decides that I should go, I'll go. It won't be the end of the world. I'll start teaching again. I've done it. This is my third what is it? Coming back from the dead. Reincarnation. Reincarnation. I was sent back home after I was Iran's ambassador to the UN. I went home and stayed in the university for 6 years. Then I was sort of reincarnated as foreign minister. And then after my term as foreign minister ended, I went to the university and had 3 wonderful years writing 2 books. And now I'm back. I can go back to university or have a retirement. It's time.
Mr. Vice President, pleasure to have you on.
Good to see you, Farid, again.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here, and thanks so much for the speakers to be here. We are going to be talking about such an important topic, peace formula for Ukraine. It is my great honor to introduce the speakers here at the session. We have Andriy Yermak, head of the Presidential Administration of Ukraine. Thank you. And Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO between 2014 and 2024. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sasha Vakulina. I'm going to be moderating the session. I'm going to try to open the floor for questions, but unfortunately we don't have as much time for this topic as we wish we could. So let's try to make this one briefer. Ukraine is entering the 4th year since the invasion in a month, and attention is turning to whether an end to hostilities could be possible and could come in 2025. Now, Ukraine's victory plan was presented by Volodymyr Zelensky in 2024 as the key framework to achieve a just and lasting peace. Where are we with the peace formula? Where are we with the plan?
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to have us today. Yes, you know, it was very important that during the last year we have the opportunity to realize this first of all, initiative of the President, which he announced in the G20 in Bali. It's a peace formula. I want to clarify the peace formula. It's 10 points which necessary implement to have the really opportunity to say that in juridical sense, in the all another sense, this war is ended, the just peace restored, and we settled all the crises which created this war. After a very successful first inaugurated summit here in Switzerland in Bergenstock last year, in which we can join more than 100 countries and international organizations, we have in November, it's in December, we have, and some months before, we have the thematic conference in which we finalize by each point concrete steps what necessary to make to really implement each of these points. Now we are finishing the work for Keep It for One documents, and we will be ready to present these documents in detail, describes each of the points of the peace formula. Next, you mentioned the victory plan of President Zelensky. Yes, it's a very important, very concrete document. What is necessary to do, first of all, for our partners and allies, to make the position of Ukraine strong for any potential future negotiations. It's a very important. Ukraine is a victim of aggressions. We are fighting practically 3 years against the country who is more than us, who have the more people, more weapons, and this is nuclear states. Ukraine refused from the nuclear weapons, as you remember, from the very beginning of our independence, received the not working Budapest memorandum guarantees, in which still we have the signature of the United States, of the Russia, of the China, of the France, and many other countries. I think all these documents it's basic documents in which now in the consultation with the new administration of the elected President Trump and other alliance, we can go forward for the concrete steps to prepare to make position of Ukraine strong, and of course to go to the end of this war by the just peace. No more than Ukrainians want to end this war.
Mr. Stoltenberg, with your tenure at NATO from 2014 to 2024, that's the year of Russia's first invasion in 2014 and then the full-scale invasion years later. Do you see we are getting closer to 2025, being able to put an end to it when it comes to the invasion that started not in 2022?
Unpredictable, so I'm very careful to predict exactly what will happen in 2025. Having said that, it's absolutely within reach to end this war this year, not least because Russia is paying a very high price. Yes, the situation is difficult on the battlefield, Yes, Russia is pushing and gaining some territory, but Russia is also paying a very high price. You know, this war started, they thought they were able to take Kiev within days and Ukraine within weeks. That failed. The Ukrainians have been able to liberate 50% of the territory that Russia controlled in the beginning. They are losing more than 1,000 men per day. The casualty rate is like 1,000, and they have been able to put their economy on a war footing, but the reality is that they're paying a very high price. Inflation now in Russia is officially around 10%. In reality, most likely much higher. The interest rate in the national bank is 21%. And they have an urgent lack of workforce because hundreds of thousands, millions have perhaps left the country. Many are at the front, many casualties, and then many are now working in the defense industry, so the rest of the economy is really suffering. So this is not the time to reduce the pressure on Russia. It's actually the time to step up, to convince them that they have to sit down and negotiate a just peace. And let me just say that Andrei Yermak and the political leadership in Ukraine, we should all thank them because they have demonstrated leadership, they have demonstrated and showed the world what courage is, and they have now for close to 3 years fought the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and actually since 2014, as you said, been fighting against aggression from Russia. So my main message, also coming back from Washington this morning, actually, I've been there over the weekend. I met many people, both in the outgoing and the new administration, and it's absolutely within reach to convince the United States to continue the military support to Ukraine. With Europeans stepping up, that will give Ukraine the military support they need.
To what extent, Mr. Yermak, do you want to see the Europeans stepping up now with the Americans, ideally, as we're waiting to hear more from the new administration? Because Mr. Stoltenberg mentioned the price that is very high for Russia to pay. But this price for Russia to pay has been getting only higher ever since the full-scale invasion, and that has not stopped Russia.
First of all, necessary to be honest. Why, after the full-scale invasion, we, with Mike Mayfall, decided to create the group for the sanctions? Because we saw in the beginning the sanctions which was issued look very good, but practically not work. Unfortunately, and this is the truth, we are from the first day, the big group of experts, international group, analyze each sanctions, give recommendations, criticize some sanctions. It took a long period of time. For example, just in the end of the terms of the previous already administration in White House, we saw the real strong energy sanctions. All the sanctions worked. It's not true, and the Russia tried to look that everything okay. It's not okay. The Russian economy, it's in the bad situations, and it will be increased. It's necessary to continue to work for these sanctions. But of course, if you ask about the Europeans, the President Zelensky was very clear and very honest in his address yesterday. We need to keep the unity of the Europe. We absolutely need close cooperations and close unity between European countries and United States. Without one of these elements, this support will be weak. It means that our job today, and thank you, Jens, I know that he's deeply understands how it's going, how it started, and his meeting in DC, and other alliance, other leaders, it's very important. We can't lose just 1 minute, 1 hour, because this terrible war is continue. We need very quickly make everything, the new administration will be in the same level of understanding what in the land, what in the front line, what our strategy, and why we continue this consultation. And I hope that and the meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump will take place as soon as possible. It's extremely important because how said President Zelensky yesterday, I very much appreciated that President Trump expressed his energy and his readiness to end this war by just peace. I'm his partner in this. I'm ready to work together.
But there's, we've heard from Donald Trump during the campaign, so yes, it has to be looked at as some of the campaign narrative and campaign promises regarding that he would be able to finish the war in 24 hours, to put an end to it. Then that's the direct change we've heard about the first 100 days, then we've heard about possibility of rather going into 6 months. The views that I've heard are about anything regarding 24 hours would be the worst case for Ukraine. So taking 100 days or 6 months is a better option for Ukraine. What do you think? How can the American administration step in there?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to realize that everyone wants this war to end. The challenge is that the quickest way of ending a war is to lose a war. But that will not bring peace. That will bring occupation of Ukraine. So the challenge is to end the war in a way that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation in Europe. That's the challenge. And I don't think we can change Putin's mind. I believe that Putin has as an ambition to control Ukraine, to put in a puppet government in Kiev. But I think we can change his calculus, that if the price he has to pay to achieve that goal is too high, measured in the number of forces lost on the battlefield every day, measured in the number of armored vehicles, military equipment lost on the battlefield, but also measured when it comes to the economic cost, inflation, overheating the economy, high interest rates, then he may change his calculus and actually be willing and be forced to sit down and negotiate, agree a just peace for Ukraine. And the only way to get there, to change his calculus, is to provide weapons to Ukraine. So the reality is that the more we want peace, and the sooner we want peace, the more weapons we have to deliver to Ukraine, and the more commitment for the long term. Because now Putin believes that he can just wait us out. If we have strong, credible commitments for long-term military support to Ukraine, the war will end sooner. And then on the United States, I cannot speak on behalf of a new US administration. I've spent some days there, but of course I'm not speaking on behalf of them. We have to listen to what they say and what they do. Second, there are some questions asked because of some statements that has been given. But yes, on Monday, on the day of the inauguration, President Trump stated that it has to be peace to strength. And he wants a deal. And if you want a deal, you need leverage. And the leverage we have on Russia is military support to Ukraine. So if you take the idea of peace to strength, if you take the idea of a negotiated deal, then the only negotiating power is the brave soldiers of Ukraine and the weapons we are providing them with. So if the US continues to provide support, if Europe steps up, and we have a credible framework to do this for the long term, then I actually think that we can change the calculus and force Russia to accept a peace which is just and lasting.
Do you think we can force Russia to accept that rather than forcing Ukraine to accept something less favorable for Ukraine?
Can you repeat, please? Tomorrow.
Yeah,
understand.
Yeah, of course. Mr. Stolberg just said it's about forcing Russia into accepting, building the leverage over Russia. I'm trying to figure out, when it comes to this leverage to be built, 3 years into it, how much more leverage can be built over that? But I'm trying to figure out about how to make sure that it's Russia that is forced to accept certain deals and not Ukraine that is forced by partners to accept deals that are not so favorable.
Look, in this sense, the President Zelensky is very clear. He never go for any compromise for the independent territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. And why we are talking always that Ukraine needs to be strong in any position. Because honestly, we are fighting practically 3 years against country which is more times bigger, more people. This country, not democracy. Please don't forget about it, because for them, life of the person costs nothing. They absolutely, it's reality. They lost thousands, and thousands in the territory of Ukraine, thousands in the Kursk region where we are still. It means that this is a lot of things against which we are fighting. And this is, we need to be in some potential conversations. First of all, in the equal position. When these languages which not work with us, of ultimatum which we are listening, if you just please look what news appeared from Kremlin, from these mad people. Ukraine and Moldova will not exist up to the end of of this year. Russia ready to go off, but just with some ultimatum. It's demonstrated that they wanted to end this war. It means that it's necessary to create the situation, then they have no chance not to go to the end of the war. And this is what it's necessary to do now. It's necessary to not lose this unity of the world. I'm especially mentioned that we made the great job during the last years. 100 countries, it's now united and supported the just peace, the logical plan which based of the international law and the chapter of United Nations. And this is necessary not to lose and to make really realistic, successful plan of the steps. Then Russia have no chances to not accept it. Ukraine, in the end, I'd like to add that, look, Ukraine not ask anything more than described by international law and the treaties which all the country respect, just for 1%. And we can explain the arguments, everything which explain in the peace formula, in the victory plan, it's 100% based of the international law. And please tell me, in what base they wishes and request? Only met wishes of dictator Putin.
I want to ask you regarding Mr. Stoltenberg, regarding Ukraine's NATO aspirations, because this is something that you were at NATO when Ukraine obviously applied, but Ukraine's possible future within NATO was cited by Vladimir Putin as the reason for starting the full-scale invasion. But I want to put that aside because Ukraine cannot enter NATO now during the war, but this is what Ukraine needs. And I'm trying to figure out what kind of security guarantees can we produce when it comes to somehow replacing or substituting the security guarantees which did not work during the Budapest Memorandum, but also with the impossibility of having the NATO security guarantees. Because it's not about Putin saying about Ukraine being in NATO and then he started the war. That's a different reasoning on that.
Well, I strongly believe that a lasting peace in Ukraine depends on solid security guarantees. Because the first step towards peace is some kind of ceasefire. At least that's very often the first step. And then a line is agreed. The challenge is that we have seen agreed lines in Ukraine before. After the annexation of Crimea and Russia went into Eastern Donbass in 2014, we got the Minsk I. That was the ceasefire line. The problem was that Russia violated that just after a few months. We had the big battles also around the Baltcheve, and they pushed the line further east, and then we negotiated, or not we, but also the countries involved, negotiated Minsk II in 2015. And then that lasted for 7 years. And after 7 years, we had a full-fledged invasion, so violating Minsk II. So if we now agree a new line, we cannot have Minsk III. It has to be something which is credible. And even if that line is not the internationally recognized border, of course, we don't have to recognize the occupied territory as Russian. But it had happened before that you have ceasefire lines where you just temporarily accept that the other side controls something because it has been a war and because there's a ceasefire line. So the requirements number one is the line. But the requirement number two, which I think is actually even as important, or perhaps even more important, is to guarantee that it stops there. And then, of course, we need, I say sometimes we need something better than Budapest, but perhaps it will not be Bucharest, meaning that in Bucharest, NATO promised NATO membership. In Budapest, we had the Budapest Memorandum that was only some paper and didn't prove credible at all. I believe that the strongest and the best security guarantee is Article 5, meaning NATO membership. It has worked. It can work again. And of course, it's for NATO to decide how far Article 5 apply. We had West Germany as a NATO ally without East Germany. We had France as a member of NATO without Algiers, and Algiers was then a province in France. Something similar is that the United States has security guarantees to Japan without the Kurils, which is the island chain north of Japan, which is occupied by Russia. So if we want, it's about political will, we can extend Article 5 as far as we want, without invoking Article 5 because Crimea is occupied by Russia. So I have been pushing for this because some years ago I thought it was possible to find something for Ukraine in between membership or not membership, but that space in between.
Just like candidate status for.
Yeah, so this candidate status, this idea that
transition.
Yeah, transition. It was easier before. But this space in between Russia and NATO is a much more dangerous space now than before. So therefore, I started in Bucharest as a Prime Minister of Norway. I was skeptical. I was on the German camp in a way. But now I realize that the space for this in between is so narrow, so dangerous. So I strongly believe that one way of ending this war in a credible way, which is not Minsk III, is actually to give strong and credible security guarantees, and then the cleanest and the best way is NATO membership. Of course, I realize that it is not enthusiasm for this in all capitals. So then maybe we also have to consider second-best solutions. And those second-best solutions are, first of all, and that will apply anyway, is to arm the Ukrainians to the teeth. Because if there was anything we did wrong in 2014, was that we didn't arm Ukraine from 2014 until 2022. And let me add, until, I think it was 2017 or 2018, this was a big discussion inside NATO. Most allies said no lethal aid to Ukraine because it could provoke Russia. It was President Trump that made the decision to start to deliver lethal aid weapons to Ukraine. And
javelins.
The javelins. And we remember, I said it was a big discussion. It was controversial. And so again, if you're concerned, I can again not promise anything, but last time I worked with President Trump on these issues, actually he helped us.
And especially javelins, it was the weapons which help to liberate the Kievska region. Because don't forget that we are started to receive the serious ammunition. It's in some months after the starting of the full-scale invasion. And one thing I'd like to add. During we are discussing the question of NATO, please don't forget, North Korean soldiers already very near of the border of the NATO. It's a very important signal. And this is about the security, not just for Ukraine, it's the security of the all Europe and in the end of the all of the world.
I have to open the floor. Yeah, let's go. We're going to take a few questions if we have. We do have 4 minutes and a half. I'm going to be very strict here. Please, let's go. Can we have the microphone here in the first row, please? Just keep it brief, please, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Ishan Tharoor of the Washington Post. Mr. Yermak, given realistically what Ukraine can expect from concessions from Russia or the reclamation of territory, what is the difference between a just peace and a frozen conflict?
Just peace, it's the peace which have the security guarantees. The frozen, it's you have for some period of time, and we have very bad experience of the frozen conflict. And I'm absolutely sure, and thank you, Jens, that you have mentioned this, the President Zelensky never going for any solutions which will be looks like the Minsk 3, Minsk 4, because honestly, I'm the person who personally was participated and represent in Normandy. I'm not sure what was the logic of the people who signed Minsk. And they maybe don't have the goal. I not mean our partners who is really want to help. I mean two parts. What they think, because in these documents, if you attentively, I know each phrase in this very bad in the legal sense documents. Zero about Crimea, a lot of very controversial things, representative of the territory, appearance of some signatures in that moment, not LNR, DNR, this separatist republic, but already appears these two guys. A lot of questions.
We're going to take one question here, please.
I'm Peter Wolodarski from Dagens Nyheter, Sweden. Mr. Yermak, you mentioned Budapest and the security guarantees that you were given, and nuclear weapons were given away from Ukraine. So first, your reflection, was that a mistake by Ukraine to give away the nuclear weapons? And if you don't get a NATO membership or credible security guarantees, are you ruling out trying to get hold of nuclear weapons once again?
Thank you very much. And I want to ask you that question too, briefly, just, was that a mistake to give up on the
I
nuclear
was
weapons?
very shortly. If we will, if in this moment we have nuclear weapons, this war never happened. Next, please imagine what happened next morning if it's not acceptable for us, but if this end of the world will be not by just peace. Believe me, all the smart people in this world will recognize that only nuclear weapons work as a guarantee. Because again, it's aggressions of nuclear states against not nuclear states. Plus, you absolutely, yes, it's not work. But I'm sorry, these documents, it's not, nobody not declare officially. I go out from Budapest. It exists. We don't like it, but it exists. Of course, juridical sense, what the people sign, but it exists. What about political images and political responsibility?
Very briefly, I really have a few seconds. Do you think it was a mistake for Ukraine to give up on nuclear weapons?
I think we have to prove that it was not a mistake, because Andrei is absolutely right, and that is that if Ukraine loses this war and a nuclear power, Russia, is able to take control over Ukraine, then the lesson is that you need nuclear weapons to defend yourself. And it's right, it's wrong to give up nuclear weapons. So that just adds to the importance of us taking the responsibility to provide them with the weapons they need to defend themselves against a nuclear aggression.
Jens Stoltenberg, Andriy Yermak, thank you very much. Wish we had more time, trust me. I have so many questions left on my side too.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the speakers for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
are oversimplifying and polarizing the public debate. 280 characters or a 30-second video are not enough to explain almost anything important. The migration of the political debate from the institutions, newspapers and coffee shops to social media is making us properly from recognizing that choices often involve trade-offs and from engaging in substantial conversations with those who think differently. Instead, it is making us focus on creating catchphrases to gain likes and shares of our own echo chambers. And this, in turn, is transforming us into a society increasingly divided and easy to manipulate. Such a drift is by no means the result of chance. On the contrary, it is deeply connected to the second way in which social media are eroding our democracies, by fostering misinformation. Every day, our feeds and walls are filled with altered images, flawed data, and fake news that distort our perception of reality. Fake news that made many people believe that the COVID-19 virus didn't exist, that the ethnic and cultural minorities that live in our countries are the source of all our problems, that the state is a scam working against the interests of citizens. Every day, we consume millions of fake news that are 70% more likely to be shared than the real ones, and that the owners of large social media companies have chosen not to stop. Not because it is hard or because they have read Derrida, but because they are good for business, because they drive more clicks and advertisers, and because they help to advance their political agenda. And this is the third and most terrible way in which social media are damaging our democracies, by becoming tools to replace votes with likes. We were told that these platforms would help to level the playing field, but instead they have made it even more unfair. Data suggests that around 1/3 of social media profiles are actually bots, and that nearly half of all internet traffic is driven by them. Searchers are completely biased by ad services and boosting hacks, and the feed algorithms, far from promoting fairness, are being engineered to hide certain political views and foster others. What was supposed to be a space for constructive debate and the free exchange of ideas has become a rigid battlefield filled with manipulation, censorship, and falsehood. And let's be clear, this didn't happen by mistake. It has been fueled in a systematic way. Of course, by foreign powers like Russia that want to weaken our institutions and alter our democratic processes. By anti-system political forces that want to bring chaos to our societies and use it to seize power like fascists did in the past. And by owners of the big social media themselves, a small group of techno-billionaires that are no longer satisfied with holding nearly total economic power. Now they also want political power in a way that is undermining our democratic institutions. And they don't even hide this goal. For instance, Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and one of their leading ideologies, openly admitted in an interview that techno-billionaires want to overthrow democracy because, and I quote, they have stopped believing that freedom and democracy are compatible. And we should wonder, the freedom of whom exactly? Because democracy is not only compatible with the freedom of the people, it is the necessary precondition for it. What truly limits democracy is the power of the elites. It is the power of those who think that because they are rich, they are above the law and can do anything. That is why, my friends, that is why the tech billionaires want to overthrow democracy. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth and the terrible threat we face. The technology that was intended to free us has become the tool of our own oppression. The social media that were supposed to bring unity, clarity, and democracy have brought division, lies, and a reactionary agenda. And they have begun, such as banking, retail, and media outlets. And they have ended up in the hands of a reduced group of men, by the way, only men, whose combined wealth triples the entire European Union's budget. In this context, many public figures and media outlets have chosen to give up and leave these social platforms. A decision that, of course, I fully understand and respect. In fact, I myself have considered doing the same, because, frankly, my life would be much easier. However, I also believe that social media have transcended what they once were. I believe they are too important, especially for younger generations, to keep considering them mere businesses, owned by someone who can manage them at their will. I believe social media are now a common resource for humanity, like the oceans, and they should be protected and managed accordingly. Because in my view, the original promise that social media were built upon is still possible. If we correct the many wrongs and do things right, we can still turn these platforms into a space of dialogue, participation, and freedom to improve our societies and strengthen our democracies. The fact that so many people are using them for that is proof. But of course, to achieve this, we will need to act swiftly and decisively. We need to create a common front that unites all who believe in democracy, regardless of their political ideologies, and take bold measures to tackle this bold threat. And today, I would like to advance 3 ideas, 3 measures that I will propose to all European leaders in the next formal Council meeting that will take place in Brussels. First, I propose putting an end to anonymity on social media. In our countries, no one can walk the streets with a mask on their face or drive a car without a license plate. No one can send packages without showing an ID or buy a hunting weapon without giving their name. And yet, we are allowing people to roam freely on social networks without linking their profiles to a real identity. This paving the way for misinformation, hate speech, and cyber harassment, because it is facilitating the use of bots, and it is allowing people to act without being held accountable for their actions. Such an anomaly cannot continue. In a democracy, citizens have the right to privacy, not to anonymity or impunity, because with those two, social coexistence would be impossible. That is why I believe we must push forward the principle of pseudonymity as the functioning element of social media, and force all these platforms to link every user account to an European digital identity wallet. This way, citizens could use nicknames if they want, but in the case of a crime, public authorities would be able to connect those nicknames to real people and hold them responsible. Because accountability is not an obstacle to freedom of speech, It is an essential complement to it. On social media user, or it's much better to say, one social media user, one real ID. This is the only way to really ensure that minors do not access inappropriate content, that people who commit crimes are banned or prosecuted from social networks, and that the millions of fake profiles that exist and influence the public conversation are removed. My second proposal is to force open the black box of social media algorithms once and for all. The values of the European Union are not for sale. Safeguards like content moderation and fact-checking are both legal and moral requirements that must be followed by all. That's why I think we have to fully enforce the Digital Services Act, making it clear to big companies that its provisions are non-negotiable and strengthening sanctions for those who do not comply. By the same token, I believe we should also reinforce the capacities and competencies of the European Centre for Algorithm Transparency, so it can inspect the functioning of social networks without any limitations, and create special funding to make this issue one of the EU top research priorities. We must put our brightest mind to work on this, just as the enemies of democracy are doing. Of course, there's no point in holding social media users and employees accountable if their owners are not, especially considering that they are among the richest and most powerful people in the world, and that the biggest fine ever imposed by the European Commission on a tech company equally to 0.6% of its annual profits. I repeat, 0.6% of its annual profits. Or, to put it differently, to what that company earned in less than a day. So that's my third and final proposal. That we make sure that social media CEOs are held personally accountable for non-compliance with laws and norms in their platforms, just as it happens in other sectors. For instance, the owner of a small restaurant is responsible if their food poisons customers. Social media tycoons should be held responsible in their algorithms poison our society. In short, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm proposing is that we take the fight, that we face this threat head-on, because our ability to do so will likely determine the health, safety, and freedom of our children and the generations to come. So let's take back control. Let's return digital platforms to their original purpose and transform them into safe and fair spaces for conversation. And let's stop those who want to turn them into a weapon for dismantling our democracies. In a nutshell, let's make social media great again. I know it won't be easy. I know we are all scared, because the people we are up against are extremely powerful. They have almost unlimited financial and technological resources and very dangerous allies, and they play dirty because they don't follow our moral rules and live in a world without consequences. But I know that we can win this battle, because we're right, because we're more, and because we've done it before. Thank you very much.
So, Prime Minister, thank you so much for this special address. As is our tradition here, we would like to have still a little bit of a conversation. I think we have a few minutes left You've covered democracy, social media. Let me ask you about the transatlantic relations overall. You have stated that both the European Union and the United States are stronger together, and obviously it has been a very important relationship for both. In the current environment, how do you see the relationship evolving? Are you optimistic that we have what it takes to make sure that the European Union and the United States will remain stronger together?
Well, thank you very much, Mick, for this question. I do believe that the European Union and the United States, we share a strong transatlantic bond, rooted in different aspects such as culture, history, common interests, common values. We are, how can I say it, allies. If trade war is not in the interest of the US, neither the European Union. Is a zero-sum game. So, my approach is to be constructive, and that the European Union try to strengthen this transatlantic bond. Second, I think that, of course, the world is very big. There are global players besides the US, and I think that the movements that the current Commission, and with Ursula von der Leyen as President, is taking, go, in my opinion, in the good way. I explain myself. I think it is very important, the trade agreement that we achieved, the European Union with Mercosur, also with Mexico. We had different agreements over the last months with Chile, with Canada years ago, and I'm pretty sure that the Commission is also, working with other regional blocs and countries to strengthen and bridge this trade relationship. I think this is very important for the European Union because we will earn more influence in the geopolitical debate and geopolitical stage, and of course it will enhance our economic development as a continent. And then I do believe that we need to highlight and defend our way of doing things, the European way, as President von der Leyen said last Monday, I believe, or Tuesday. And in this regard, I think that we need to take some lessons from the current debate, and to have a stronger ownership in very specific sectors such as defense, technology, and energy. And this will be the approach of Spain regarding the US and our transatlantic relationship, and of course within the European Union. I think that we have an opportunity if we move forward and we make stronger our political project, which is the European Union. And talking about this European way of doing things, I do believe that coming back to social media, it is important to fully implement the Digital Service Act, as well as fully implement the first ever regulation on AI that was achieved under the Spanish presidency of the European Council.
Thank you. And before we close this session, one other question. I mentioned in the introduction that Spain has been one of the most dynamic economy in the European Union recently. But there is a lot of commotion around the economic agenda right now at the EU level as well. We all know that we have two important reports that came out from Mr. Letta and from Mr. Draghi last year. We also know, of course, that we have a new Commission with many new initiatives. What would be, based on the Spanish experience, because you've been looking at how to attract more high-tech, more innovation-intensive companies, you are very competitive on the energy landscape. So what are the lessons that maybe you have learned, and based on that, what would be your bold proposals for Europe on the economic front so that it can be more in control of its competitiveness in this changing world?
So I don't like to give any kind of lessons to my allies and the rest of the member states. I don't like to see a kind of different blocks within the European Union, the northern bloc and the southern bloc. But it's true that from the south we can also provide solutions to common challenges that we are facing as a continent or as a political project, the European Union, I mean. No? For instance, you know, I remember when the war started, the energy crisis that we suffered, and how from the Iberian Peninsula we provided different answers based on our different energy policy, renewables and green energy policy, to earn more energy autonomy as the European Union. So I would say that we can provide solutions to common challenges that Europe is facing. Second, I do believe that that this combination of structural reforms and funds to enhance this digital transformation and a green transition is a good formula, is a good equation, which I think that we need to repeat it after 2026, because at the end of the day, if we define altogether public goods at European scale, such as defense, security, digital, or science and energy, as Draghi reported stated, I think that we could enhance productivity and competitiveness for Europe. And last but not least, I think that that we need more trade, no less. I think that, as I said before, what is important to show the rest of the world is that we are an open society, open economies, and what we want to do is to strengthen multilateralism and, of course, to bridge positive relationship with other parts of the world. Of course, we want to do it with the European Union and with the US, of course, but we also want to do it with Latin America, which is a region very close to Spain and, of course, to Portugal, but with Africa, with Asia, with China. I think one of the challenges that we have ahead, the European Union as a whole, is how do we define a positive and a constructive, and of course an exigent one, relationship, a common relationship towards China. So we have a lot of challenges ahead, but as all Europeans know, crisis is that tool that Europe needs to move forward. The thing is that really we know what we need to do. Mm-hmm. You were talking before about the capital union market. It is a must. Mm-hmm. There's a lack of political willingness, and this is something that now we need to overcome. We need that political willingness in order to have that tool and to enhance productivity and competitiveness in Europe.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your address today, also for the short conversation. I really appreciate it that you shared your views, but also you shared a lot of solutions, ideas, and it is a very can-do, on the front foot attitude that you showed us here. Really appreciate it. Good luck with your work to more competitive Europe, and we look forward to welcoming you back at the annual meeting in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.